come on, keep bringing back again, because I must say, every time feedback from our audience is actually amazing. People love having Adrian Hales back in the studio. And here we go. I have Adrian Hales again. Who is Adrian? Adrian is a transformational learning and coaching expert, mBIT coach, and a trainer. He is also the host of the Superhuman Journeys Podcast, and he will tell you all about that in a minute. So please welcome Adrian into my studio today. And Adrian, I'm so happy to have you back. Thank you for joining me.
Hi, Olga. Thanks for the introduction. Amazing as always. And I think you're extraordinary, really, because now, as we discussed before we came on to the show, is that you're a TV star. You've been on TV, which is something that I haven't done. So, well done back to you as well.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I think everybody's on a journey, and I'm so excited to speak today about how actually people can transform their lives in a very, very practical and, with easy implementable advices, because what I know, that who we are now are not the people who we were before. So I'm really excited to share more value today with people and to tell them all about how we can actually, in a practical, in easy implementable way, to transform our lives. But Adrian, can I ask you the first question? And that's about actually transforming the life. Why do you think people should transform their lives? Like, why should they do that?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. And I think for those people that, they desire more out of life, or they've come to a place in their life where they've got some level of change or some level of conflict, and they know deep down, or they feel that conflict, that energy within their body, and they know that it's time to change. I would suggest that the more that you leave that change, the more that it affects not just your performance at work, within your business or your career, but also affects the other people within your life as well. So I would say that it's very important for people to change, but only if they want to, because when the change process happens, you have to be committed, you have to be open to that change, and you have to realize that the change process, if you want to go somewhere in life, and if you're ambitious and you're aspirational, you have to realize that change process, there is going to be discomfort in it. There is going to be times of joy, elation, and there is going to be some challenges you face along the way. But I'd say why people should change is that life is about growth. And when we're able to grow, we're going to feel a lot more happy and more fulfilled. And the relationships and how we relate to others in our life, they're going to see a better version of us.
That's true. I love that answer. Yes, I love it. Yes, because as Tony Robbins says, my favorite guru of all time, Tony Robbins, right, my man, he says the happiness is in the progress. And I could not agree with him any less, because I think that's true. Every time you see a progress, for example, even if you do a simple thing like gardening, you become happier when you see the progress of your result, of your work in the garden, because everything grows. Even if it is resulted to your work, if you progress, you become happier and you feel more fulfilled. If it is relationships and you feel happy and when relationship progresses, here you met, you're dating, here you're moving together, here you're getting married, everything is about the progress. So I think when people are wondering still to themselves, I don't think I should change. I think it's a question, why don't you want to become a better person, which we can leave to themselves. So let's work with those people who want to get transformed, because again, as we both know, you can't help those who don't want to be helped, isn't it?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, I think the most important thing is that at some level, you need to recognize that there is something to change. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be something negative or something positive. It can just be something that's useful for you to change in life. And there has to be an openness to engage within the change process. Otherwise, as we know, there is no change going to happen. Because those are the fundamental parts that the person has to be aware that there's a need for change, and also an openness to change and to engage within a change process, whatever that is for them.
Very true. Very true. Okay, so shall we just start the journey in that case? Shall we just start with the first tip, and we can just bounce off each other and we can just give each tip each. So what would you say is the first thing to start with when it comes to transforming your life? And by the way, guys, who are watching us right now, please go ahead and ask your questions, because first of all, this is not scripted, okay? So we are going to be welcoming your questions. So Adrian, what is your tip number one for transforming the life?
Well, it's really interesting because I think we've discussed this before, but when we look at the personal development industry, what the personal development industry is built on is that we want certain things. So, we want more money, we want better relationships, we want to feel more happier within ourselves. And when we look at that, the word etymology of want, it means lack. So what we have to be careful of is that addictive cycle of the personal development world is that I'm always wanting things to fill up the sense of lack inside of us. And one of my mentors, Peter Freeth, he wrote some articles on that, and it actually really kind of sat with me, because when we're constantly wanting something, it is that sense of lack and there's a sense of something missing within inside of us. Now, a better, more practical question for people to ask, in answer to your question, Olga, when we're starting the change process, is getting a clean sheet of paper and start with one question. And the question is, where are you going? Ooh. Because that implies a route. And also with where you're going is what would normally happen is once you know where you're going, you will recognize some waypoints, some milestones, some experiences that you already have to get you to that experience. And you'll also notice when you put where you're going is some of the experiences and some of the things you're not too comfortable with, because as we know, journeys are, as I spoke about before, you have your challenges and you have your the joyful moments as well. So that's a great question to start with, is where you're going, or where are you going?
I love that. I think it's a really powerful question, yes, because it's like with GPS, with the sat nav. You can't really get anywhere if you don't know where you're going. Yeah. So I agree with you. I think it's really, really important to know where you are going. Okay. Well, I would say from my side, the tip to transform the life is to start with something similar to what you say, where you're going. But I would say we're starting with where you are now. And the reason why, I think because they really complement each other. Because when you know where you want to go and you know where you're right now, you know what you have to close. But what happens very often, people know where they're going. People are aware of what they want to achieve, but they never almost evaluate where they are right now, who they are right now, what type of personality they're right now. And I don't mean just location as in right now you're in London and I'm here in Bolton. What I mean by that, where you are right now, is who you are as a person. What do you have? What attributes do you have in your life to get to where you are going? Because I think for example, if I would right now tell myself, okay, I want to be an actress. Okay, what do I have for an actress? Do I have the look? Do I have the talent, right? Do I have great memory to remember my script and everything else, right? So if I don't have it, okay, am I really capable to get that, right? That's a good question. You can train yourself to be anything you want, but I do believe we need to be really realistic where we are right now, who we are right now. And then we can close that gap between where I'm now and where I'm going. What do you think about this, Adrian?
Yeah, I think closing gaps is very important to understand. Based on what you said, is yes, closing gaps is very important. And what people tend to do is when they might journal or they might look at like online. If you look at some of the language, it's very much about being positive or being negative. And as we know, if you think about if I say, Olga, you're amazing, or Olga, you're not very good, that's a judgment from me. The problem is with putting things down that we want to attract positively into our life, or things that are negatively affecting us. We can end up living our lives through other people and the approval of other people. So using those words positive or negative, what they can do is they can create different states. So if we say positive things and negative things, it can change our state. But what we've got to really think about doing is staying balanced, because we are where we are. We've got great experience in our life. We've all got our own uniqueness, and we want to be careful of adding those judges, whether it's a positive or negative. And the more useful thing to do when we're evaluating in our life, as Olga said, when we're looking and getting to the reality of, once we've understood where we're going and then getting to the reality of our current place, is asking things, what would be useful to learn, who would it be useful to become to help me achieve where I'm going, and what are the things that are not so useful now, habits, ways of being, and circumstances and people in my life, because that, when you evaluate those, they're not from a judgment perspective, and you'll be in a much more neutral and balanced place when you're evaluating where you are right now. So that's using those words, useful, not useful, rather than it's, positive and it's negative.
I love that. I love it. So would you say this is your next step, how to transform your life, is actually to watch out the language, to watch out the positive and negatives, and including the experiences and everything else? Is it the second tip, then? Is the second step?
Yeah, because I was having a conversation with somebody this morning about, in NLP perspective, is anchoring. We can anchor certain states through the words that we use consistently. Yeah. Now, if we're constantly using kind of really positive language to overcompensate that we're not feeling great, or really negative language, negative self-talk, straight away we have to realize that using those types of words, they anchor us in certain states. So we have to just be aware of the language that we're using, and by saying useful or not useful, that puts us in a lot more balanced place. And as we know, when we're balanced, we make wiser, better decisions, because our whole nervous system is balanced, and we can stay calm and clear in our thinking. When we use lots of different words that trigger kind of negative states, we're not in our peak performance state. As well as being too positive is also hiding to the fact that you're negative. And I think Barack Obama says this great quote, and he says, what was it? Don't despair when it's going bad, and don't believe the hype when it's going good. And if we can stay in that middle ground, it's a very good place to be.
Yeah. Love that. Love that. Amazing. Well, Adrian, before I'll share my next step, let me just read some amazing comments here. It's remarkable what we have here. So here, Rashid asks us, do you think that willpower is the principal term in transformation and self-development? What do you think, Adrian?
Okay, so I think willpower has a part in it.
Yeah.
And though, if you're constantly focused on willpower, it would be fair to say, if we're always having to have willpower against something, what are we opposing? What is the force that we're up against? And also, if it is all about willpower, what are we trying to prove? Because willpower would suggest to me that there's a force that we're fighting against, that we always have to have more motivation and more willpower. And coming from somebody who's played professional rugby, I also now realize that having that willpower is not always useful, because remember that, imagine for a second that, just to validate what the guy said, what's his name, Rashid, what Rashid said is that willpower does play a part in it. But remember that you can't always rely on willpower, because just like a Duracell battery with the battery meter, if it's all about willpower, what's going to happen is that battery meter is going to go lower and lower and lower, and that's going to lead to burnout. So my perspective on some of the principles of transformation and self-development is about reconnecting, having practices to reconnect and fill your battery meter back up, so that you can lead, you can be compassionate, you can be courageous, you can be creative, because that is probably one of the most, it's about using our willpower, and then also the regeneration of the willpower as well. And as we spoke about on many different lives, it's about looking at principles and practices that you have in your life to build that holistic point of view where you can regenerate, so you're the best every day.
Love your answer. I think you're so right. It's not only about the willpower. Willpower is important, but there's so many other attributes which you need to have within yourselves. I really love that answer. Thank you so much, Adrian, for that. Well, I'll express my opinion on this as well, because I think apart of willpower, what we need to have is also knowledge about what is going to pull us back. Because you can have the best intention in life, you can have the best intention to push yourself towards the success, towards great relationships, towards great career, towards great wealth. But if you're pulled back by subconscious messages which are limiting you, then unfortunately willpower not going to help you. And to give you an example, for example, my client, he really wants to do really well in his business, and we're working on it, and he's really succeeding actually. And his business is only 3 years old, and he's turning already $1 million a year. And what's really interesting,
wow.
Yeah, it's really successful business. And what is interesting, even though he turns $1 million a year within 3 years only of running that business, what was really interesting that in his mind, that his message about his business was, I'm still a startup. And that's one of the perfect examples how, because I'm a startup, he doesn't go bigger. He wanted to go global, but he didn't, because his thinking was, I'm still a startup and I can't do it. And I was thinking, and I said to him this, I said, when exactly do you become a big business? Like, what in your own mind, in your own mindset, what is the line? What is the line frame, when you're going to be big business, when you're going to be ready? If within 3 years, turning $1 million a year, you're still a small business, still a startup. And he said, oh, I never thought about this. But that's a perfect example. We all are startups at some point in our lives, right? Whether it is your career, business, or relationship, whatever else, you always are in a startup position. But if you allow that message to stop you forever, no matter how strong willpower you have, you will never move on. And it's not only about being a startup. It could be, I'll never succeed because I didn't go to college, or I'll never succeed in a relationship because I came from a broken family. It could be anything. It could be, I'm big boned and therefore I will never lose weight, which is BS, right? So there's so many messages which our subconscious holds. And I think it's really important, a part of willpower, to actually know what stops you. And you and I, Adrian, we know it's quite challenging to discover yourself what stops you, right? Because you live your life and everything is normal. But one tip which I always advise to people is to recognize what stops you is pay attention to what you say. Literally hear what you are saying. It could be phrases like, oh, I'll never, I'll always, or I am this way and I never can change. So your language will actually tell you, because that's exactly how me and Andrea, we work with clients. We'll listen to what clients are telling to us, right? We can't really look into somebody else's mind and brain, right? We have to listen, so you can do it as well. But by yourself, yeah, it's quite challenging.
Yeah, and I think going back onto willpower, if we look at it from a neurological point of view, from mBIT, for instance, if we look at the willpower from that perspective, is that the willpower it comes from our gut. And what we find, for instance, we have a whole body neurological perspective, that when we're balanced neurologically through our centers, our center, which is our heart, our gut, and our mind, that we have to be in balance, because it's all about willpower, which is all about the gut. It's all about taking action. It's all about being more, wanting to be more. But the heart's all about compassion. It's about relational effect and how we affect others, and how we feel about ourselves. And if we're not coming from a place of compassion when we have willpower, then we can destroy organizations, destroy our relationships as well. Because remember, the heart is our relational effect. Our mind is our stories, our cognitive perception, and the meaning making, and our creativity. And our heart is our compassion. It's how we relate. It's how we connect to ourselves. And then the willpower comes from our gut and the sense of identity. So if we're always going and having more willpower and more courage, that actually our heart is important, because that's how we relate to other people. So going back to that, it's important about having to have the courage, but then also, how can you be courageous with compassion for others? Is an interesting question to ask, is how can you be compassionately and courageously operating in the world, within your role with others as well? Because that's an important question to think about.
I love that. Love it. That's really good answer. And I think we covered quite a lot on the willpower. So shall we just move on to the next question before we give more tips? And I think we're going to be here longer than half an hour today, Adrian, because we have so many questions.
Cool.
Question comes from YouTube and from Vinit. He says, hi, do you believe in the 21-day positive habit challenge as several books claim, or is it much more than that? What's your answer?
Okay, so there's been research to say that it takes 66 days to change a habit. But it's interesting. It's an interesting perspective. Is that my perspective is, if you want to change a habit of stop drinking coffee, this is my perspective on it, and it's also someone had on the show is a Professor Agnes Steib. It's on it's on my podcast. It's called The Science of Hyper Performance. But he says that if you change something, you've got to replace it with something.
Yes.
So actually, I've stopped drinking coffee. I haven't completely reduced it because I still like the taste of it. But what I find, if I drink too much coffee, that I'm kind of lack focus. It kind of gives me too much energy because I've already got a lot of energy myself anyway. So I've replaced it with tea. I know the tea's got caffeine in it, but what I find is coffee dehydrates me, whereas tea and water tends to rehydrate me. So you have to change it with something else. So yes, change the habit, but what are you replacing it for? And it's quite an interesting perspective because a great question to ask yourself is, what is the intention of changing the habit? So what is the intention for you for changing the habit? And that's like, if you will, I know that it's the future we're moving towards. It's our intention in the future. And then what is the attention each day or each week that you're going to be doing to change the habit? So for instance, if it's you drink 3 cups of coffee a day and your intention is to not drink those 3 cups of coffee a day because, like me, you can't focus at work, for instance, and affecting your performance. So you need to think about, so you're going to drink 3 cups of tea instead. And that's something then you need to stick to each day, that you're going to replace those 3 cups of coffee with those 3 cups of tea. And then over time, what will start to happen, that repetition will change the habit.
Love that. I think it's very right answer. It's about the result which you want to achieve, and sometimes can take longer, sometimes can take less. But my personal view on this actually, that it's a matter of decision. And what happens post the decision moment, it's the placebo effect. So some people want to sell themselves, okay, 21 day, I'm going to stop smoking. Well, in my life, I remember I was speaking to my father-in-law in the past. Obviously, I'm not married to my ex anymore. And I remember he was smoking at the time. And I told him, I think this is the last cigarette of yours. And I was pregnant at the time. And he was like, oh, come on, Olga, I like smoking. And I said, well, you're going to be a granddad. Do you really want to continue smoking when you're a granddad? And he just looked at me and he was like, oh, Olga, don't do it to me, please. And I just playfully said, this is going to be your last cigarette. Watch that out. And surprisingly, until now, he doesn't smoke. And my son, he's already 14. He never smoked ever since. Wow. So it is about that programming. It is about that placebo which we have, right? We can tell ourselves it's going to take me 21 days and you're going to take it 21 days. You can tell yourself it's going to be a 60 days challenge and you're going to do it in 60 days. But you can't tell yourself today, I'm going to stop doing something or going to start doing something. And it all depends how strong your decision is based on what is your why for that reason. Because again, if you want to be just positive and you're just joining the pool to be positive people, but you're not really wanting to be positive, you can be there for 211 days and you're not going to be more positive.
Yeah.
But you have strong reason. It's going to take you 1 day, 1 millisecond telling yourself, I decided, and you will proceed with that.
Yeah, and also the word that Vinit has used is positive as well. Yeah. Straight away, that's when we go back to the conversation earlier. Is we're straight away we're into that kind of we're into positive habit challenge, and if I don't quite do the 21-day positive habit challenge, that's a negative impact. So we always have to be careful with the language that we use.
Yeah.
It could just be, do you believe in the 21-day habit challenge as well? So that's an interesting one. And I like what you talk about from someone stopping smoking.
Yeah.
Because yes, those big changes, it's about a shock. We've got to create a shock for people. I remember listening to someone speak about how they helped someone stop smoking, and they were a coach in the NLP world, and what they said is that before they started working with the client, the client said, "Look, I want to stop smoking." He said, "Look, I'm prepared to help you, but I want the addresses of I need the addresses of all your family members, because obviously health and safety and all that kind of stuff." So he got the addresses of 10 of his most close friends and family. And then he said, "So you're going to help me stop smoking then?" He said, "Yes. So what I want you to do is I want you to write me a statement to all your friends and family saying, I'm going to quit smoking. These are the reasons why, a real kind of deep message." And then the coach sent that message to all the friends and family. And obviously that guy then obviously stopped smoking, because now he was accountable to 10 of the people. And they all knew that he'd sent that really deep and loving letter to them saying, and now he was, bound by the agreements that he sent out to everyone. So I thought that was quite an ingenious way of getting someone to change their habit.
I think it is quite interesting. I never heard of anything like that.
Yeah.
It's really interesting, really interesting. Are you ready, Adrian, for another question?
Sure, yeah.
So this question comes from Facebook. Questions are on different places because we're on different platforms. Here's the question from Rodrigo. Hello, Olga and Adrian. How can we appreciate where we are right now before we transform our life? I must say, Rodrigo here, he stole one of my tips, but it's okay. I was just about to say about gratitude, because I was going to say my next tip would be being grateful for where you are now, being grateful for every step on your journey towards your end of destination. And I think it's really, really important to either write it down or go for a walk and verbalize that or think about that. But that's something what I do. I have my journal where I share 10 gratitudes, and they're a mixture between those which already happened and those which I want to happen, but I write them down in a now, in the present tense, because I want my subconscious to practice how it's going to feel like when I'm going to be there. But that's my takeaway. But that was supposed to be my tip. Thank you, Rodrigo. What about you, Adrian? What do you think about this?
Yeah, I think journaling is really a good thing to kind of put your thoughts down. It's a practical way of working as well. But obviously, if we have to appreciate it, it means that we don't appreciate something in our lives. So I'd always say, yes, it's good to reinforce the things that we are appreciative in life, but also be kind to ourselves and realize that we're not going to appreciate absolutely everything. And more importantly, don't force yourself to appreciate something or someone or a circumstance or a situation in your life if you feel that you don't appreciate something. And then it's more useful to then look at what are the themes, what are the things, what's the area of your life that you're not appreciating, and then just free journal around why. And what you'll normally find is this great exercise that we can do is if we find something challenging, a person, a situation, or something within our life or career or business, a really great exercise that I've used before is you just free journal. So you just free your thoughts, your feelings about the circumstance, the person, or the situation you find yourself in. So you free journal as much as you can. And then what you do is you go back through the whole free writing and you pick 2 or 3 themes. So you pick the themes that you've noticed, whether it's that you've stayed in the situation for too long, there's arguments, you haven't changed when you know a career or business when you know you should have done, or there's a relationship that's not working for you and you haven't communicated, or you know that you've been lazy and you haven't had the willpower to change. And then you work out those 3 themes and then put that on a cleaner sheet of paper. And as you look at those 3 themes, and what is the one theme that holds all of those themes together, and there'll be a pattern, and then what do you want to change it? It'll be a clear yes or no. If it's a no, that's your choice. And if it's a yes, it's very simple. What is the one thing you're going to do to change that? And it can be simple as having a conversation. It can be simple as having a conversation, or changing an environment, or setting a new direction. Again, that's completely up to you, whatever comes out of it. But I've actually really found that that's worked well. And then you can put some standards or boundaries in place, or ways of being, but specifically standards or boundaries in place, or ways of communicating to that person, that situation, that you weren't doing before. And I think that will give you, I would say that when we're not appreciating something or someone and there's conflict there, I think sometimes that affects our self-worth or our self-respect. And what you'll find is that the other person will appreciate you more, and you'll appreciate yourself because you're actually taking accountability for that change process. And that's an empowering thing, that when you can do that.
Very true, very true. Oh gosh, anyway, I really love your answers, and I can tell we're going to be here definitely longer than half an hour, because we're already in half an hour.
What are your views on that question? What do you think about that question?
Well, yes, I think it's really important to remember, as I said earlier, it is about definitely remembering where we are right now. And as I said earlier, gratitude, right? But again, you're right. It is about recognizing that you can't be grateful for everything. And sometimes there's so much pain in people's hearts and people's minds that don't feel being grateful. But there was one episode which I did actually, and that was about being thankful even though you are angry. And I think that's really, really powerful when you can be grateful even when you're angry. And that episode was with Evie Show. So if somebody types in YouTube Evie Show and Olga Geidane, they will find this episode. It was actually about her being grateful, her sharing the gratitude, and her being thankful for everything what she had at that time, even though her husband died. No, her husband left her, but her child died from cancer, and she was really suffering, and she really was getting herself out of where she was emotionally through the power of gratitude, finding little things what she was grateful for, even though she didn't feel like she wants to. So yeah, I think it's, again, probably one of those which one size doesn't fit all. I guess if you are the kind of person you can find it, that probably is great. But I think it doesn't hurt to try. It doesn't hurt to give it a go, try. If it doesn't help, maybe move on and find a new strategy. But Adrian, we have here a little testimonial, which is great.
Wow.
He says on LinkedIn, it's quite long, it doesn't going to fit there, but they're going to read it.
Okay.
Hi, hope you remember from last talk, I followed up your advice on being more vulnerable. Now I have taken steps to travel and meet the girl I talked about, and now investing wholeheartedly to see where it goes. And there's another comment from him. I have been able to think lighter, less guilty about not feeling some emotions, and able to communicate more to her. How beautiful.
Wow.
Dude, how beautiful is that, Adrian, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's exactly an example of what we've been speaking about. So that's an example of this. What we've been speaking about is that to being aware that something wasn't working, like I feel a conflict, I don't feel quite right, there's something that needs to change, asking a question or seeking support or looking for the answers, and then implementing, searching for the answers and asking the question, okay, and clarifying what actually is it, exploring, having some self-awareness and time to pause, what is it? Then finding out that actually that you're in control of the change, and then actually implementing the advice, and then changing that situation, that person and that circumstance. And then obviously the benefit now is a loving relationship, companionship, and someone to spend time with, which is really why we're on this earth, is to connect and to have human conversations and connections like we are with other people. So I'd say well done for taking that ownership, and the openness to change is important. And then that, to be vulnerable, if we look at the word vulnerable, that does take courage. But it also takes compassion from an mBIT perspective of, of actually implementing that advice and relating to other people and connecting to that person. So it's a combination there of compassion and courage. And you've got the outcome which you wanted, which was to go and see the girl that you quite fancy and love.
And I think it's really powerful. You're so right. It is about transforming yourself, changing yourself, being vulnerable, understanding where things are coming from, and of course, improving your relationships. I must say, I'm not sure why people still don't pay attention to their relationships. I think relationships is the key happiness in our life, because when you leave the house, you slam the door because you're angry, you go to work, you're not in a productive state. And you cannot build a business when you're not in a productive state. You can't build your career if you're not in a productive state. And then at the end of the day, you don't want to go back home. So why do people still think it's okay not to be okay in relationships? It's not okay not to be okay in relationships. You need to make sure you do improve, you do work. And nobody was born with certificate and a manual how to build relationships. It's something we all learn.
I completely agree. And I think, sometimes we have a fear of expressing, a fear of self-expression, and when we're in a relationship. But none of us are perfect. We have our strengths, things that we're really great at, and things that we're not so great at. So I think it's very important in a relationship, when you're relating to the other person, is recognizing and validating what they're great at and what you're not so great at, and just being open and clear to that. Because if you're part of a team, and if you're relating in a relationship with somebody and connecting with them, and you're part of a team, if you say, look, these are some I'm really great at, this is what I'm not great at, you tend to fill in the blanks with each other and support and give each other advice on those certain things, and then it becomes like unity then, and that's what it's about. It's about creating unity and not divide. And based on what Olga said, that it's important to kind of check in with ourselves as well, is because it's very important that, I'm not going to go back into willpower, but if we're always striving for certain things and we're trying to get somewhere, we're setting another goal, a bigger goal, and trying to change things, or move our career or grow another business. These are all external type events. And what we don't tend to do, and Olga will validate this as well, is that we don't tend to take time to pause and look at what's being communicated internally. And a good barometer to know that there's something to change is how you feel. So if you're feeling a sense of constriction, it's like a constricting feeling when you're in an environment with certain people within life or business, across our lives, you're feeling that constrictive feeling. There's something our whole intelligence wants to communicate. Now, we're a whole somatic self. So we're not just a mind, we're also a heart, a gut, and our autonomic nervous system brings all that together. So a lot of the stuff that's being communicated to help us externally or help us change our life is coming from inside as well. And a very simple, as I said before, a very simple way to understand that is, if you're with somebody, if you're at work, if you're running your business, if you're in an environment, you're in social groups, how do you feel? Is it an expansive feeling, or is it a contractive feeling? And how long? And if it is a contractive feeling, how long has that experience been happening? And how long can you put up with that experience if it's a real kind of contracting feeling? And if it's an expansive feeling, what your whole neurology is saying is, this is something in alignment, with who I am. And if you have that contracting feeling, that can be from multiple places within our whole somatic system, our body. And you can only really understand what's being communicated when you take time out to pause, actually factor time in, as Olga said before about journaling, factoring time in and working out what's being communicated in the external world, but what is your body communicating to you? Yeah. And you will be so surprised with the answer, because this whole moving organism is like one kind of intelligence with all the answers that you require. So that's my practical advice, is getting into a place where you feel balanced, you feel calm, turning off your notifications, turning off your Facebook, blocking out everybody, tell people in your life, I'm going away for an hour, and then just look at the different areas in your life. Are they contracting? Is it an expansive feeling? And what's actually being communicated from your body? And that will be very clear on what you can do next. So that's my advice around those certain topics.
Love that. Love that. Such a wonderful, wonderful answer. And Adrian, I must say, we have so much positivity happening right now. People are thanking for great perspective on willpower, thanking for the show, saying a good one, and saying it's a lovely perspective on willpower and great show. We have great feedback from people. And also we have a lot more questions. But
Wow.
I have some great news to you guys. Me and Adrian, we're going to go regularly now. Once a month, we're going to go regular. And next time, we're going to be live again on the 30th of October. So please take your diaries out and put it in your diary. We're going to be next on the 30th of October. We're going to be on YouTube, on LinkedIn, and Facebook again, just like today. And Adrian, I must say, I think I know the topic of the next session, because we have a question here. And the question is about how to, let me just bring it up. Because I think I quite like it, but I think we can talk quite a lot about this. And I think next time will be quite powerful to bring it up. So,
yeah, we've got to keep people waiting in suspense, right?
Exactly. I'm holding the suspense. Exactly. I love holding the suspense. Yes. I'm just looking because I literally just lost it. Was that? Oh, yeah, there we go. So here it is. Hi, Adrian. During self-development, if I face judgment, impact from others who have indirect influence on the now for me, like a boss or pandemic or political environment, how do I handle my resolve on my path? And I would say pause here. I think this question could be discussed next time, because we have similar questions below, and it is about how can we actually control, how can we eliminate the impact of other people who are negative about change. I think this is going to be such a hot topic. What do you think, Adrian?
Yeah, and I think we can only control the way we react in those and the way we communicate. But I would say, like, go away and think about what you mean specifically, and then redesign the question with what you really mean specifically, and then wait for the next live, and then we'll answer what you really mean specifically, because we're empowering you a little bit to work out what you really mean.
I love that. So yes, guys, please put in your calendar 30th of October. We're gonna go live with Adrian again at the 1 p.m. UK time, London time. Put it there on YouTube, Facebook, and also LinkedIn. We're gonna be going live with the topic about how can we still change even though we don't have that support system around us, or people are negative, or whatever else. I'm sure we're gonna come up with some really catchy and good topic. Don't you think, Adrian?
Definitely, yeah. I think definitely it's an important topic, is making sure we've got the right people around us, the right tribe, and making sure we're seeking out support as well. And that comes from the environments we work in, the people we associate with as well. Are the environments the people that we spend our most time supporting our highest good? But I think that comes from how you know that is, are you in alignment with your true essence, as in your life's purpose? Are you in alignment with the work that you were born to do, the work that you're on this planet to do? And then what are the people, situations, circumstances that you need to create on that kind of frequency, on that alignment? So no, we're kind of getting into the kind of spiritual type perspective, but I think it's very, very important from my perspective that we validate and we're okay with that we are mental, emotional, and spiritual beings, and that those elements are important, and being in alignment with who we are on this planet.
Yes, Yes, true that. Well, I cannot wait now for the next episode, which is going to come out on the 30th of October. Adrian, I'll be definitely looking forward to it. Thank you so much for today. What you shared today was really, really valuable. I love our conversations, and I'm so happy now we're going to do it on a regular basis, which I think will be quite remarkable. And everybody who was watching us today, thank you so much for your appreciation, for your love, for your amazing hellos. Obviously, we could probably spend here an hour just reading all the hellos and all the locations people are joining us from, but I'm really grateful and thankful for you being here with us today. And Adrian, do you want to say anything before we go away?
Yeah, no, thanks. I think it's always very good to validate people that have taken time out for their own growth and development. So everyone that's taken time out to be on the live, at some level, there's something you want to change. You want to be more in something, and I'd encourage you just to take some time out with a journal and just and look at some of the questions that myself and Olga have gone through today, and just explore it from a neutral perspective, and I think you'll be noticed what things come up.
Very true. Right, and I also shared the connection details, how people can get in touch with you on LinkedIn and also Facebook, and also they can check out your podcast. Is there anything else you would like to share with people, how they can find you, or this is enough? How do you feel? LinkedIn, Facebook, and then check out the Superhuman Journeys podcast. And you will see an episode from Olga called the Harnessing the Power of Vulnerability as well. So that'll be on there. So give that a listen. Thank you so much. Well, thank you, Adrian. Thank you, everybody else. Whatever you do, have a wonderful time. Enjoy that. Stay safe. And we'll see you back on the 30th of October with Adrian together again. How exciting is that?
Oosh.